Well, as you know, we just got back, or you may or may not know, we just got back from Hawaii and celebrating our honeymoon there. Has anybody been to Hawaii? Were the birds crazy when you were there? I mean, I'm not talking seabirds and seagulls and things like that. These are pigeons, white pigeons, gray pigeons, brown pigeons, multicolored pigeons, sparrows, what? Chickens. A few chickens. Yeah, they were out at the Dole plantation. But the birds were crazy about snatching your food. You really had to keep an eye on it. And all the restaurants are open air, of course, and the birds know that, and it's like a buffet for them, and they're always around, underfoot, on the tables, you name it. And it reminded me of a Chinese proverb that says, you cannot prevent the birds of sorrow from flying over your head, but you can prevent them from building nests in your hair. And that's sort of what we're talking about this month. Our theme is all about joy. Now, I chose joy because I thought that's an easy one, right? I've just had this beautiful wedding. I've been on a 2-week honeymoon. It really ought to be easy to talk about joy throughout all of that time frame, right? And it is. It is. I am very filled with joy and happiness around all of those events. But as I was going through those events, there were lots of opportunities for joy snatchers, which is what I'm calling those little birds now. They were food snatchers. They're like joy snatchers, where things can come in and snatch our joy if we allow it. If we allow it. But I noticed in Hawaii that the birds would leave. We didn't have to touch them or anything, but and they leave. So that's kind of a shooing away of the joy snatchers, or the birds, if you will. So, how many times do we allow something external to us to take our joy? You know you come from joy, right? That is one of the inherent God qualities of the infinite substance from which all of us are created. That is part of us, of who and what we are as spiritual beings, is joy. And yet we look around our world and we can see misery and suffering and all sorts of things that don't appear to be joy, can't we? And if we listen to things like the news or arguments or some of the dissension that's going on in parts of our country, we might think there's not much joy. But that's allowing those things to steal our joy, isn't it? It's allowing those things to have power over us and take our joy away. So as I checked out of reality and into paradise in Hawaii, you would think that nothing could take my joy. Anybody traveled lately? Been to an airport? On an airplane? TSA? Cranky flight attendants? How about that crying little child whose ears hurt next to you, who doesn't want to be on that plane for 6 hours? Or the bellman, or the desk clerk, or the waiters and waitresses that aren't really having a great day because they're dealing with all of us tourists. Yeah. Traveling's not easy anymore. Remember you probably don't, but I've seen pictures of the old days, like Pan Am Airlines, and they had little curtains on the windows, and it was all first class service, and everybody got all dressed up, and it was an adventure to fly. Well, it's an adventure today, all right, too, right? But not quite the same adventure. It's just not a lot of fun. It's just not a lot of fun anymore. But what I realized in my joy and my happiness was that I was at choice. I could choose to complain about those things going on, or I could choose to bless them. Has complaining about anybody ever changed that person's behavior for anybody? It doesn't work, does it? Getting angry about their behavior, being frustrated about the way they're behaving, allowing that to steal our joy. What does that do? That makes for 2 unhappy people now, right? Instead of just one. So choosing to bless that as opposed to complain about it or condemn it or make it wrong, recognizing that, maybe those TSA folks had just gotten a memo from home office that says, hey, we've got a high security alert. Don't panic, anybody, but check everything really closely today. They're doing this for my safety. Can I bless them from that standpoint, that they're doing this for my safety and the safety of everyone on the airport and on the airplanes? Can I take that perspective and go into that environment rather than being cranky and upset that, why are they going through all my things? Right? Why me? I packed right. I don't have anything in there. Yeah. So it's all in our choosing and in our perspective. Cutting others a little slack. Cutting them just a little bit of slack. I've been reading a book by Dr. Roger Teal, the recently retired senior minister at our Mile High community up in Denver. And the book is This Life is Joy. This life is joy. And in it he says, there is a hidden power in living from our joy. There is a hidden power in living from our joy. And that really struck me. I mean, he says a lot of profound things in there, a lot of good stories, but that one line is where my talk came from, the secret power of joy, because I think when we can come at life from that place of our joy and recognizing we're not going to allow anyone or anything to snatch that joy away from us, that we're not going to give them that power, that we can then find our own power. We can find our own power. I don't know about you, but I have noticed that when I'm happy, when I'm in a place of joy, when I'm filled up, life flows my way a little better. Have you noticed that? Yeah, life flows a little easier. It's easier to sidestep the cracks in the sidewalk. It's easier to bless the people that are maybe not on the same path we are. Living from a place of joy gives us that platform of power, personal power. I'm not talking about power over anything. I'm just talking about our own personal power to choose the experience of life that we want to have. Think about that. No longer feeling like we are at the effect of the world of effects. That we have choice. I choose joy. Craig's song, more life, more love, more joy. When I was in ministerial school, I noticed this growing sense of joy in me. It was like this underlying feeling that I was noticing was growing as I got more in touch with the fact that God is all there is. In all, as all. God's got this. God's got my back. The universe is for me. Nothing is against me. And as I began to get that out of my head and into my heart and really embody that idea, I noticed this sense of joy, no matter what was happening around me, began to always be present. This almost like a background program on the computer, but it was this sense of joy that was always there. And school was busy. I was traveling to go to classes. I was studying all the time. I was working still in business and doing a lot of things. I'd put other things in my life on hold because I was so busy doing the school things and the time and the work required to deepen into the study. But even with all of that, I was able to find that joy center within me. This picture is from my hometown in Virginia, in Pembroke, Virginia. It's called the Cascades. And it's about a 2.5, 3 mile hike from the town up to the falls. And there's 2 falls. There's the top one, they call that the Grasshopper Falls, that you can hike up to. And it drops down to the next ledge. And then the next ledge is the whole thing they call the Cascades. And there's a lot of power with that. It's a little bitty creek right behind it, but by the time it gets there and begins that drop, there's a tremendous amount of power in that water, and there's a lot of noise with falling water. Have you noticed that waterfalls are noisy? There's no motors like a fountain, but it's noisy just from the gravity and the flow of the water. But if you notice the bottom of that pool, it's not too busy, is it? It's pretty calm. The water is very active, very powerful. But then it settles in that pond and is very, very calm. Very, very calm. And that's how I think of life with joy, that no matter what the waterfall, the raging waters around us are, we can always be or have that pool, that calm, centered pool within us that is joy. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living and also the author of The Science of Mind, which is what we teach from, says in his book, 365 Science of Mind, that Lori read from this morning, and it's available in the bookstore, he says, things crowd in on us until we lose some of the greatest of all gifts. Anybody felt that way? Oh, yeah. The simple, spontaneous joy of living and a trust in the power of good, which alone is able, ready, and willing to meet all our needs. Ready, willing, and able to meet all of our needs. Let us then again return to the place of assurance that comes with the simplicity of faith. Comes with the simplicity of faith. Now, it sounds to me like joy might be a little bit of a byproduct of faith. That the greater our faith, just like my grounding in that idea of God is all, and the universe is for me, and nothing is against me, that creates faith in that, which then the byproduct is that underlying sense of joy. That underlying sense of joy. And joy is not just being happy, is it, though? Joy's not about being happy. Joy doesn't mean that you're not going to have those birds of sorrow flying around, right? Doesn't mean we're not going to experience illness and career challenges and lack of financial flow. Doesn't mean we won't experience those things, but it means when those things show up, we're able to dance with them, to be in the experience but not lose our joy because we have faith that the experience is there with purpose, that there is order in this universe, that there's order in the universe, that whatever is coming to us into our time-space reality in this moment is here for us in some way that we may not, likely won't, understand. If it's negative, we don't understand the negative things, do we? Why is this here? Why is this showing up? We can be grateful in the positive things, but we sometimes are challenged in being grateful for the negative things. But have you ever noticed how some of the biggest growth that we have comes out of those negative things? Comes out of the challenges? While we were traveling, I was thinking about this talk, off and on, once in a while. And I was noticing people. There's a lot of people in Honolulu. If you've been to Honolulu, it's a very busy place. It's a pretty big city. I don't know if it's a big city. It's a small city with a lot of tourists. How about that? And but what I was noticing as we were doing a lot of people watching on the beach and as we were out and about and on the streets and so forth, was you can almost tell as if you watch people for a while, the ones that look at life as the glass is half full and the ones that look at life, the glass is half empty or broken on the ground. I mean, it's really interesting because you can see how they react to things. To being jostled on the city streets, to buses being late, to traffic in shopping malls. Anybody been to that Ala Moana shopping mall? Oh my goodness. Whoa. 350 stores, 96 levels, 87 tunnels. I mean, it's crazy. And we were there on like a Thursday afternoon, and it looked like Christmas. It was jam-packed. It was just crazy. But those are opportunities for this jostling thing, right? And to get off track, to get off kilter, to be unhappy about something. But wouldn't we be happier if we chose joy? Would your life be better if you chose joy in every circumstance? If you chose to check into paradise on a daily basis, check out of this reality stuff and check into paradise. I don't mean that we're going to not still do our work in the world. But I mean that we'll do that work in the world from a place of joy as opposed to a place of resistance. We have, as part of our vision statement, and the vision statement for Centers for Spiritual Living, the idea of creating a world that works for all. Not just Americans, not just Mexico, not just, but for everybody. All people, beings, animals, plants, the environment, a world that works for all. Now, can we do that by resisting the things we don't like out there? War on drugs, war on illness, war on, right? And the more we resist those things, the more energy we give them to get more energy in the world. If we came at it from a place of joy, then we can do our work of, you know what? We can change our planet one consciousness at a time. We don't have to fight anything. We can, as Ernest says, be for something and against nothing. Be for peace. Be for equality. Be for love. Be for compassion and joy and kindness. Imagine if we had more of that sprinkled around instead of more resistance sprinkled around. From Creative Mind and Success, 1919 is one of Ernest Holmes' earliest works. He says, life will become one grand song when we realize that since God is for us, none can be against us. We shall cease merely to exist, we shall live. If you've ever felt you were in a day-to-day grind and monotony, same thing over again. Get up, go to work, come home, get up, go to work. If you've ever felt that way, this is what he's talking about. Life will become one grand song when we realize that God is for us and none can be against us. It's a powerful place to live from. It really does create joy in our lives when we can take that concept out of our head, out of the realm of concept, into a reality, a lived and experienced reality within us. More life, more love, more joy. Stepping out of reality for a while was good for me. It allowed me to shift my perspective back to a place of choosing joy, of choosing not to allow what's happening to me in the world of effects to steal my joy, to snatch it away. To be able to look at whatever those facts are, to be with them, to dance with them, to learn and grow with them, all the same while holding that other thought that says, this is what I would prefer instead. This is what I would prefer instead. We don't deny what's happening. We turn towards what we would like to experience. But changing habits is not easy, is it? Anybody ever tried to change a habit? Break a habit? Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy. Choosing joy is not easy because there's a lot of distractions out there that want to snatch it away. And it may not be with intention. It's just kind of how life flows sometimes. But we have to be aware and choose it instead of choosing anger, instead of choosing frustration, instead of choosing blame. Imagine if we could let those go. Or when you feel those coming up, go, no, I'm choosing joy. I'm choosing to stay in my joy. Ernest reminds us that the Spirit is neither sad nor depressed. If you would catch the vision of the joy which would be yours, you must dry your tears, you must lay aside your fears, you must think from the inspirational center within, which is nothing less than the divine in you singing its song of life. Another beautiful quote by Ernest. Dry our tears and lay aside our fears. Again, sounds easy, but it's not always simple to do, is it? It's not always simple to do. This week I'm going to invite you to shoo away your joy snatchers. Everybody do that. Exactly. Susie's got it. Gone. Before I finish that, I have to tell a funny story. We have laughed about this so hard. If you've seen pictures of Waikiki Beach, you know that they've got the Royal Hawaiian Palace, or whatever it's called, or the hotel. It's pink. Well, we found out why it's pink. It was pink because during the war, any buildings that were pink they thought were hospitals, and they wouldn't get bombed. So they painted their hotel pink, trying to preserve it. It worked. Obviously, it's still there. The Veterans Hospital is also pink, way up on the hill there. But we were sitting there enjoying the sunset, and the birds were, again, all over the bar and doing their thing. And this big white pigeon comes up and gets on the bar. And the bartenders have their back to the bar, and one of the ladies that's sitting next to us gets her camera out, and she starts taking pictures. And it's like, oh, this is not good, right? Because that's encouraging them to stay. Well, the bartender, she's a woman, and she looks like she may have more of a rural background. And we got tickled as she turned around and she grabs the bird right by the tail and does this. I could almost see the bird going, ah! But it was the only person we ever saw touch one of the birds. But she did an excellent job. Like, she had done that more than once. I thought maybe she'd raised chickens or something. But chicken casting, exactly. But it was a bird. It was a bird. No animals were harmed in this. But it was funny. So anyway, I'm going to invite you to remember that story of shooing away the birds. Sometimes you do grab them by the tail feathers, right? Sometimes you can just shoo them away. But choose joy. Choose joy this week. You know, you can go back to your regularly scheduled programming next week, but choose joy this week. Don't let anyone, any circumstance steal your joy from you. It's your birthright. It's who you are. It's who you were born to be. Be childlike in that joy again. We heard a little baby giggling while we were there, and there's just such a contagious laughter to hear that giggle of a little child floating through the air and over the balcony. So let's look at some practicing the presence this week and how we might discover this joy. The first is, don't let those birds build a nest in your hair. Accept the fact that, yeah, they're going to fly around. They're going to be there. But if I keep focusing on them, they're going to annoy me even more. Let them fly over. Don't let them build a nest in your hair. Don't let them build a nest in your hair. Number 2 is dance with what is. Ignoring the facts of what's in front of us doesn't serve us. And that's not something that we teach in Science of Mind. We teach to turn away from them, though, not to ignore them. To know what's there, to know it's there in our experience, to know that it's there for something for us we may not understand, but focus our attention on what it is that we seek to experience instead. Sometimes we just have to ask them to dance, don't we? Ladies, have you ever danced with, I'm going to rephrase that, has anyone ever danced with someone who couldn't dance very well? And you know, sometimes we do it anyway, don't we? Because of the sheer joy of dancing. The sheer joy of dancing. So sometimes when those negative things are flying around us, just go right up to them and ask them to dance. Just go right up and ask them to dance. And number 3, schedule your willow time. Anybody seen a weeping willow tree? When I was growing up, there was one just up the block from me, up at the Snyder's house, and it was a huge tree and had all the willows hanging down all the way to the ground. But underneath, if you opened the willows and you walked through, it was open underneath. So it was like a little fort for us kids to go and play in. It was always nice and cool in there. And I always hold that memory because it was such a secretive, special kid kind of place for us to hang out. But this idea comes from Roger Teal's book on joy, and he suggests that we schedule specific, non-negotiable willow time each week. Now think about that. Is that a luxury or a necessity? I think in our society today it's becoming a necessity, isn't it? Because we have so much coming at us on a 24/7 basis that can snatch our joy away if we allow it. That if we have that non-negotiable, scheduled willow time, the no matter what, time for ourselves, to let go, to abandon ourselves to fun. When's the last time you did that? When's the last time you abandoned yourself to fun? Good for you. We have to dance for our spirit's enjoyment. Dance for our spirit's enjoyment. Allow ourselves to transcend problems, challenge duties, and drudgeries. Transcend problems, challenges, duties, and drudgeries. Now, I think of this as like someone asking you to pick them up at the airport. If someone asks you to pick them up at the airport, you're going to schedule that, aren't you? It's going to be on your calendar. You'll rearrange whatever you need to do to make sure you pick them up at a certain time. We just had a lot of family and friends that came in for the wedding and so forth. And, there were airport runs that had to happen at certain times. So if we schedule this willow time for ourselves, just write it in your calendar. This is my willow time. If it's an hour or if it's a day, wouldn't that be a luxury? Not your spiritual practice. Most of us have a daily spiritual practice of some sort that we already have in our day. This is fun time. This is you time to have fun, to abandon yourself to having fun, to dance, to play, to sing, whatever brings you great joy. Schedule that for yourself. And I invite you to do that this week. This is Sunday. Between now and next Sunday, schedule some time for you to have fun. Have fun. And then do it again for the next 3 weeks so that over a 4-week period, you've got fun time blocked out on your schedule. And see if it makes a difference in your life. See if it makes a difference. I want to close this morning with a final quote from Ernest's wonderful book, This Thing Called You. If you've not read it, I highly recommend it. It is one of his most touching in some ways books, because he really explains the science of mind in a way that resonates at a soul level. He says, "This spirit is happy, whole, free, filled with joy, eternal in its existence, and can provide you with everlasting expansion. All of your highest hopes and dreams have come from it. The echo of its being is in your intellect. The voice of its unspoken word is in your mind. The feeling of its light and life is in your heart. And the emotion of its imagination is in your soul." Isn't that beautiful? So this week, choose to be joy that you are. That's what we've come here to do. Would you join me in an affirmative prayer as we anchor this morning? Recognizing the infinite power and presence that is God, we recognize that power and presence is joy. That joy is a quality of the divine. It is also peace and harmony, order, love. And all of that is here, now, present, in, through, and as me, as an expression of it. I am that joy. I am that love, that life, that harmony, and the divine order of a universal presence that loves, because that's all it knows. And as I know this truth for and about myself, I know this for each and every one here today in this room. For I know that each of us is an expression of this divine source, this infinite substance, this loving presence, this thing called life. And so from this knowing of our unity in this place, in this thing called joy, I speak my word for and about each of us. Knowing, claiming, and accepting for each of us that we are that joy, that we are expressions of it, that our life is illuminated by it, that we see it all around, we experience it in, through, and as us. And I know for Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living that it is a community of joy and of love and of prosperity and of healing and of peace. And I know to this day, for anyone that has anything on their hearts that they would like prayer support around, as they bring that into their awareness, as they lift it into the high consciousness of their heart, that whatever needs to be healed is healed, revealed is revealed, truth expressed, abundance flows. Whatever the need, I know that it is met in this moment, for we know that it is done unto us as we believe. And how grateful I am for this knowing. Grateful I am for this blessing. Grateful I am for this community. As I release this into the activity of law, knowing that it is done, it is so. The word spoken is the word made manifest. And we affirm this together by saying, and so it is.